All right, CJ, we're rolling, but we're in gallery. If you could switch it to speaker view, please.
Should be in speaker. Just let me know.
Little delay. Let me see. We're good now. All right. At this time, will all sergeants please start the recordings?
PC recordings underway.
And cloud is rolling. And good afternoon and welcome to today's remote New York City Council hearing for the Committee on Governmental Operations. At this time, will all panelists please turn on their video for verification purposes? And to minimize disruptions upon speaking, please place all electronic devices to vibrate or silent mode. If you'd like to submit testimony, please send via email to testimony@council.nyc.gov. Again, that is testimony@council.nyc.gov. Thank you for your cooperation. Chair Ung, we are ready to begin.
Good morning. I'm City Council Member Sandra Ong, Chair of the Committee on Governmental Operations. I'd like to welcome my colleague to have joined us here today, City Council Member Lynn Shulman. Before we begin, I want to remind everyone of the stakes of today's hearing. We are living at a time when faith in the democratic system is at a historic low. Recent polling's shown that roughly 6 in 10 Americans believe that U.S. democracy is in crisis and is at risk of failure. Fueled by political polarization and misinformation, distrust in civic institutions is on the rise. Here in New York State, we are not immune to such political cynicism. Just last year, 2 common sense pro-democracy reforms were defeated in a statewide referendum, due in large part to the misguided fears about voter fraud. When New Yorkers voted to establish the Civic Engagement Commission in 2018, they were promised that CEC would be a force for enhancing civic trust and strengthening democracy in the city. At today's hearing, the committee will evaluate how well CEC has lived up to this promise. The New York City Charter gives the CEC a broad mandate to develop new initiatives to promote civic participation, including through volunteerism, stewardship of public spaces, participation in community groups, and other activities. In addition, the CEC is tasked with implementing 3 defined programs. First, it is required to implement a citywide participatory budgeting program, allowing city residents to identify and vote on projects for the mayor to include in the executive budget. Second, the commission is responsible for implementing a post-site interpreters program designed to expand upon the language assistance services provided by the Board of Elections under federal law. Finally, the CEC is required to provide various forms of assistance to community boards, including by helping them find independent land use experts and helping them meet the language access needs under their constituents. Unfortunately, the Commission has faced challenges in rolling out these initiatives, due in part to interruptions caused by COVID-19 pandemic. Progress has been typically slow with respect to the citywide participatory budgeting program, which has still yet to be implemented almost 2 years after the deadline given by the charter. With no funding set aside for citywide PB program in fiscal 2021 and 2022, the CEC implemented 2 smaller scale PB initiatives focused on communities hardest hit by the pandemic. While I applaud the CEC's effort to make do with the resources it had available, these smaller scale programs were a far cry from the citywide program that New Yorkers were promised when they voted to establish the CEC in 2018. With that said, I was encouraged to learn that plans are underway to finally implement a citywide PB program in fiscal year 2023. I look forward to discussing these plans in greater detail today's hearing. I'm also eager to learn about CEC's effort to make interpreters available at post sites throughout the city. Promoting language access service has long been a top priority of mine. In a city where roughly 25% of residents have limited English proficiency, it is absolutely critical that we provide robust language assistance services at post sites. This is true today. It will be all true next year when their legal permanent residents and immigrants with work authorization are given the right to vote under the city's municipal voters law. And with that, I want to thank representatives, from the Civic Engagement Commission who have joined us today. I also want to thank our committee staff, Principal Financial Analyst Sebastian Bacci, and Senior Legislative Counsel CJ Murray for their work in putting this hearing together. And I also want to thank my own Chief of Staff, Alexander Hart, for his assistance. I will now turn it over to our moderator, Committee Counsel CJ Murray, to go over some procedural items.
Thank you, Chair. I am CJ Murray, Counsel to the Committee on Governmental Operations. Before we begin testimony, I want to remind all hearing participants that you will be on mute until you are called on to testify, at which point you will be unmuted by a member of our staff. The first panelist to give testimony today will be Dr. Sarah Saeed, Chair and Executive Director of the Civic Engagement Commission. In addition, Chief Democracy Officer Laura Wood and Senior Advisor Wendy Trull will be available to answer questions. During the hearing, if a council member would like to ask a question of a specific panelist, please use the Zoom raise hand function and I will call on you in order. We will be limiting council member questions to 5 minutes, which includes the time it takes the panelist to answer your question. Please note that for ease of this virtual hearing, there will not be a second round of questioning outside of questions from the committee chair. As a reminder, all hearing participants may submit written testimony to testimony@council.nyc.gov. We will now hear from our first panel. Before we begin, I will administer the oath. Chair Saeed, Chief Democracy Officer Wood, and Senior Advisor Trull, please raise your right hand. I will read the oath once and then call on each of you individually for a response. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth before this committee and to respond honestly to council member questions? Chair Saeed.
Yes, I do.
Chief Democracy Officer Wood.
Yes.
Senior Advisor Trull.
Yes.
Thank you. Chair Saeed, you may begin your testimony.
Good morning or actually afternoon. And thank you, Chair Ung and members of the Committee on Governmental Operations for holding this hearing and for the opportunity to submit testimony about the key accomplishments of the Civic Engagement Commission. I'm delighted to be here today, particularly because it's April and it is our anniversary month. The initial round of commissioner appointments was first announced 3 years ago in April 2019. And one of the things that excites me about the commission is the story of its creation in itself is a civic participation win for New Yorkers. The proposal to create the commission surfaced during a public process to revise the New York City Charter in 2018. And the proposal to create the Civic Engagement Commission eventually made its way onto the ballot in 2018. And this ballot measure was then in turn passed with over 65% of the vote in the November election. As Chair Ung mentioned, the Charter grants CEC broad authorization to support civic engagement throughout the city in partnership with community organizations and civic leaders in public and private sectors. The Charter also defines specific programs and activities at CECs to create and support, including citywide participatory budgeting, language assistance at poll sites, and assistance to community boards. In 2021, pursuant to Mayoral Executive Order 88, Democracy NYC became a program of the CEC, thereby incorporating voter education and voter registration into our work. Two additional programs of the Commission include the Task Force for Racial Inclusion and Equity Tree Neighborhood Initiative, which is a pandemic response coalition building project in the 33 neighborhoods that have been designated as hardest hit by COVID-19, and the People's Festival, which celebrates New Yorkers' resilience and explores the intersection of civics, arts, and joy. Our programs work to enhance civic participation, promote civic trust, and strengthen democracy in New York City. By being grounded in the practice of listening and lifting the voices and power of all communities, our vision is to foster a dynamic and inclusive civic engagement process that will help make New York City a national model for democratic participation. Over the past 3 years, some key areas of impact include language assistance for voters. The Civic Engagement Commission is charged with implementing a poll site language assistance program for limited English proficient individuals in languages and geographies that are not served by the New York City Board of Elections. As required by charter, CEC conducted a public comment and public hearing in 2020 to promulgate a methodology to select languages and poll sites served through our program. The charter requires the CEC to review and update its methodology by September 2022 and at least every 5 years thereafter. While the total number of poll sites depends on the amount of money allocated to this program, availability of qualified interpreters for the program languages, and the time needed to recruit interpreters, CEC's methodology delineates how languages and specific poll sites may be selected. The methodology is available on our website. Between 2020 and 2021, CEC served 2,784 voters in 11 languages in 1 primary and 2 general elections. In the 2021 primary, when ranked choice voting was first implemented in New York City, we leveraged 25 community and ethnic media venues to promote the program in 13 languages. Based on the resources currently available, CEC services 100 poll sites over the course of each year's primary and general election cycle during the last weekend of early voting and on election day. CEC works closely with the New York City Board of Elections to coordinate smooth, on-the-ground operations for voters. We also work in partnership with the Campaign Finance Board on voter outreach and education events. CEC also established a Language Assistance Advisory Committee, which we call the LAC. This was relaunched in February with a 2022 to 2023 cohort. It is a charter mandated advisory group, and it plays a vital role in developing and implementing the poll site language assistance program and advancing language justice. There are currently 21 members who represent 15 language communities, and we work with the LAC, community-based partners, and the Campaign Finance Board to produce targeted in-language workshops on civics and voting, and to translate information about voter registration and poll site services. We are currently translating voter education palm cards that were produced by the Campaign Finance Board into languages beyond the Federal Voting Rights Act mandated languages. LAC members also advise the Commission on how we could place multilingual ads in community and ethnic media to promote poll site services. Under the area of voter registration and education, within the Democracy NYC program, last month, about 13,760 students registered to vote during the March 2022 Civics Week. And this voter registration drive was coordinated by staff in the Department of Education Civics for All team, the Mayor's Public Engagement Unit, Democracy NYC, and the CEC. In total, since 2018, nearly 75,000 young voters have registered to vote during Civics Week. In ranked choice voting education, Democracy NYC reached 90% of New Yorkers with ads in 25 different languages during the 2021 June primary. And this is an estimate by OpAd, which was Democracy NYC's media placement vendor. CEC also supported outreach events to language communities and organized outreach in tree neighborhoods. The full multi-sector concert of activities that included the Campaign Finance Board, ranked the vote, and many nonprofits across the city, many elected partners really helped to drive New York City voter participation in the last primary to the highest rate that it's been in 30 years, with over 26% turnout. For participatory budgeting, we are charged with implementing a citywide PB program. Citywide PB gives residents a direct say in how their tax dollars are spent by engaging residents in idea generation and voting on local projects to be funded in the executive budget. Although an emergency executive order suspended citywide participatory budgeting for health and safety reasons during the 2020-2021 period, CEC was able to run 2 smaller pilot PB processes that have really helped to raise awareness of PB and have increased the voices of underrepresented residents in decisions about how public funding is spent during the pandemic. And also these processes have strengthened partnerships and built relationships in the community to help build the civic infrastructure and lay the path for citywide participatory budgeting. So in the first pilot, we put up $100,000 of our own OTPS funding for a youth-led process called It's Our Money. And 2,000 youth chose 5 projects of 20,000 each. And some of these programs included Girls Mental Health Mentorship Circle in the Bronx, a community garden project in Brownsville, recycling and climate change program for youth, school mentorship program in Queens, and a leadership development program for young musicians in Flatbush. And all of these programs have been successfully implemented. And based on survey respondent data, over 90% of youth who participated were young people of color. In 2021, the mayor allocated $1.3 million to support a recovery-focused participatory budgeting process in the 33 tree neighborhoods hardest hit by COVID-19. And here, community-based organizations generated project ideas based on their neighborhood priorities, including mental health, reducing gun violence, increasing access to youth programming, and addressing hunger. And each neighborhood had its own ballot form. Surveys and voting were conducted through both online and in-person paper ballot formats, and the ballots were translated into 15 languages. And 29,500 residents in the tree neighborhoods voted in the people's money and chose 33 winning PB projects that were worth a total of $1.3 million, which is about $40,000 per neighborhood. This year, as was mentioned, CEC plans to launch citywide participatory budgeting in late summer. And OMB granted $5 million in funding for expense projects citywide through the fiscal year 24. And the program will include a full year of idea generation and voting through June 2023. And the projects will be implemented beginning July of 23 and continue through June of 24. The charter requires the CEC to develop the implementation plan for citywide PB in coordination with borough presidents, community boards, city agencies, and elected officials, and in consultation with the Participatory Budgeting Advisory Committee. Commissioners vote on the implementation plan, and we are aiming to have that vote in July. CEC is required by the charter to promote participation by communities underserved by government, including non-citizens, immigrant communities, youth 16 years and older, students, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, and limited English proficient individuals. CEC also plans to facilitate the participation of public housing residents, justice-involved communities, labor, LGBTQ communities, parents, social service organizations, and faith-based communities citywide. We're developing multi-sector partnerships with a wide variety of institutions, including libraries, community-based organizations, MWBEs, college campuses, and community boards to support the idea generation and voting processes. And we also are engaging an intergovernmental advisory group and multiple stakeholders to co-design the implementation plan. We look forward to partnering with City Council members on the rollout of the citywide program to strengthen a community-based civic infrastructure that elevates the voices of communities underserved and underrepresented in local government decision-making. I also want to talk briefly about the launch of the Decidum platform. The Civic Engagement Commission was the first city agency in the United States to launch the use of Decidim, which is an open source direct democracy platform used by local governments throughout the world. The platform is governed by an international community of practitioners and is grounded in the principle of transparency. The platform enables residents to propose ideas, endorse and comment on each other's ideas, and create groups and vote. We use this platform to run the last two pilot PB processes that I spoke of for youth and in the trade neighborhoods. And the platform also hosted 13 city council member participatory budgeting processes this year. And to date, over 15,000 New Yorkers have created an account on the platform. It's currently hosting the NYC Speaks City Employee Idea Challenge to ask city staff for suggestions on program and policy changes. In the area of community boards, assistance in capacity building, language assistance, and land use, the charter requires the commission to provide assistance and training to community board members, specifically by identifying and providing access to urban planning and land use professionals who do not have an interest in the proposals being considered by community boards, by providing services and tools to address the needs of limited English proficient individuals who live in community districts, and training in the use of tech tools and uniform meeting procedures. Since July of 2020, we've held 21 workshops and trainings that have reached 998 community board members. Topics included parliamentary procedures, such as motions and amendments, nominations and elections, committees, efficient meetings, secretary duties and responsibilities. We also held trainings on conflict resolution, affordable housing, public engagement, and language access tools and best practices. In the area of language access, we provided all 59 community boards with access to telephonic interpretation through LanguageLine. And we worked with the Mayor's Office of Data Analytics to produce the first citywide language map that helps users to understand the top 5 languages spoken in their community district. And that map is available on our website. In the area of land use, to improve access to neutral resources, we initiated an REI requests for expressions of interest. We compiled a directory of 13 land use consultants, including MWBE providers, which was distributed to the boards. We purchased and distributed 59 community boards, plain language guides from the Center for Urban Pedagogy on zoning, affordable housing, and ULURP. Working with GUID, we created a community board internal web page in CityShare to facilitate board members, staff, and board member access to training, recordings, presentation decks, and other community engagement and land use resources. We collaborate closely with borough presidents, the Department of City Planning, the Mayor's Community Affairs Unit, DUIT, Immigrant Affairs, and OMB in community board outreach and assistance. For the People's Bus and People's Festival, the People's Festival is a 5-borough tour that centers the transformative power of arts and culture to activate public spaces. And it brings critical resources and information to communities using music and arts to celebrate New Yorkers' resilience. The festival began as a public artist in residence partnership with the Department of Cultural Affairs, and it centered the People's Bus, which is an artistically transformed bus from the Department of Corrections. The People's Bus programming began with a 2-week ranked choice voter education tour in 2021. More than 800 residents completed an RCV ballot about People's Festival programming. Later in the summer, the festival stopped in tree neighborhoods hardest hit by COVID-19. And in the fall, there were additional events with the bus, including voter registration drive in Flatbush, Brooklyn, and Get Out the Vote event in the Bronx, in collaboration with Democracy NYC and local partners. The festival offered 15 creative engagements to the general public and partnered with a total of 16 agencies to provide resources, information, and to increase public engagement in communities that were hardest hit by the pandemic. We received $175,000 of New York City art project funding and $170,000 in philanthropic funding to support arts and civic engagement, including the festival, and in turn distributed 41 grants through the New York City Artists Corps to support 148 local artists in the tree neighborhoods. The People's Bus recently found a permanent new home at the Clemente, which is operated by the Clemente Soto Velez Cultural and Educational Center, a Puerto Rican Latinx multicultural, multi-arts and cultural institution that provides affordable working space and venues to artists, small arts organization, and reflects the cultural diversity of the Lower East Side in our city. And CEC will be conducting additional community programming with the People's Bus and the Clemente in future months. As I mentioned earlier, the Civic Engagement Commission also works in the Tree Neighborhood Initiative to support collaborative community-based coalitions across the 33 priority neighborhoods and that have been impacted by the pandemic. And we connect residents through this program to information and resources to support ongoing COVID-19 recovery, increase local civic infrastructure, and we conducted a needs-based participatory budgeting process. These coalitions bring together nonprofits, businesses, houses of worship, community boards, educational institutions, mutual aid networks, and civic bodies, and they provide a localized approach. We manage these coalitions in partnership with the Young Men's Initiative and an MWBE project management vendor. Some accomplished in this coalition building project include each coalition promoting vaccine education since it began, and we've reached an average of about 23,000 New Yorkers each month through a variety of outreach methods, including texting, tabling, emailing, social media campaigns, newspaper, ad placement, communication through apps. The initiative also reached nearly 144,000 New Yorkers through about ranked choice voting, again, through a variety of methods. And each neighborhood is currently implementing their winning project from the TREE participatory budgeting process. The neighborhood coalition coordinators meet monthly with the commission YMI and have received training and vaccine outreach, ranked choice voter education, the city human rights law, and preventing hate crimes. Before I close, I'd like to give you an overview of the CEC structure, staff, and budget. We are made up of 15 commissioners, 8 of whom are appointed by the mayor, 2 by the city council, and 5 by borough presidents. The chair of the commission serves at the pleasure of the mayor and serves as the executive director. The charter requires at least 1 mayoral appointee to be enrolled in a political party with the highest number of registered voters, and at least 1 other mayoral appointment to be enrolled in a political party with the next highest number of registered voters. Although initial commissioner appointees' terms ranged from 2 to 4 years to stagger appointments, all commissioners except for the chair serve 4-year terms. CEC's current employees total 9 full-time employees, a part-time artist in residence, and 2 college interns. We are in the process of hiring and onboarding for 3 vacancies due to attrition and 3 seasonal temps who will be supporting our Pole Site Language Assistance services for the primary. CEC also received 10 additional lines to support the rollout of citywide participatory budgeting in the November plan, and we are actively recruiting for all of these positions. These include an expanded outreach team of 2 new lines and an outreach director, as well as lines for the participatory budgeting program. The outreach team will be developing and implementing targeted field strategies to support language assistance, voter registration, voter participation, and other initiatives of the CEC, and will be integrating a variety of outreach methods, including in-person, virtual, and arts-based approaches. We'll be working closely with other agencies to also leverage their capacity and to ensure an efficient performance of CEC's functions and duties using core staff. CEC's current budget totals 4.87 million, with 1.29 million dedicated to personnel, and the remainder is for programs. The language assistance program at poll sites leverages 1.8 million to provide interpretation services, and 1.3 million is dedicated for participatory budgeting in the current year. Thank you so much again for this opportunity to speak about the work of the CEC, and I'm looking forward to answering your questions.
Thank you. I'll now turn it over to Chair Ong for questions.
Thank you. Also, I'm joined right now by City Council Member Brewer and City Council Member Hanif. And thank you, Dr. Sayed, for testifying today. So just to go back with the commissioners, have any commissioners' terms expired yet?
Yes, and they were reappointed. We also had 2 commission appointments that became vacant, and those were also filled.
Great. So right now there are no vacancies with the commission.
Yeah, that's correct.
You. And can you walk us through the organizational structure of CEC right now?
Yes, it is, as I mentioned, there are, do you want me to go through sort of the positions that we currently have?
That'd be great.
Okay. Yeah, so there's a chief of staff, the chief democracy officer is also part of the commission, senior advisor, both of whom are on the call today. And then we have a participatory budgeting advisor. We have 3 outreach staff. There's a communications line and a language access manager line that are vacant. There's also a poll site language assistance services advisor as well. And the artists in residence, and we have interns.
Thank you. And you just said the Mayor's Democracy NYC initiative was consolidated into CEC.
That's correct.
How many of those join CEC as part of the consolidation?
The Chief Democracy Officer came to the CEC, and we are working to, we'll be, as was mentioned, we'll be leveraging our outreach team to support the Democracy NYC program.
Great. And do the 2 units, are you working separately, or are you now working together as one unit?
It's one unit. The Democracy NYC is a program of the CEC similar to PB or Pearl Site Language Assistance and Community Boards.
Thank you. And just one quick question about participatory budgeting, then I'm going to turn it over to my City Council members who's been waiting patiently. What are the steps that CEC is taking to educate New Yorkers about PB?
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout the pilots that we had, we've been developing some strategies for education. And we've been talking with residents about how the process works. And we talk with them about their community needs. We talk with them about the voting process. And also, we will be talking with them in the citywide program about the overall city budget and how this fits in, how participatory budgeting fits into budgeting overall.
So when you say talking with them, how does that work?
Oh, I think it's a variety of outreach methods and strategies. We will be doing in-person engagements as well as leveraging media and ads and virtual workshops as well. So there'll be a wide variety of ways that we'll be looking to connect with New Yorkers to help explain what the process is and to invite them in to join the process.
Okay, so I assume by doing that, you're also working with the local, and this is like the local CBOs of the communities, the different diverse communities.
Yes, thank you so much for that additional prompt. We will be working with community-based organizations, and there is funding in the budget to support CBOs who are working with us in doing outreach.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Have you worked with the CBOs in the past? And if so, which CBOs are those?
Yeah, we have been actually, as you know, in the It's Our Money program, there were 5 CBOs that we work with, and we can get you the full the full list of all the community-based organizations we're working with. And in the tree process that I mentioned in the 33 neighborhoods, the lead organization for every coalition is also responsible for working on the process and getting out the vote and also implementing the program. So we can get you the full list of CBOs that we're working with.
That'll be great. That'll be great because I'm sure I and probably other people in the committee have inputs about those CBOs and what additional CBOs would be helpful in this process.
That would be great.
I do have additional questions, but I want to turn it over to this other members of the committee who's been waiting patiently to ask their questions.
Thank you, Chair. I'll call on council members in the order they've used the Zoom raise hand function. Council members, if you'd like to ask a question, you've not yet raised your hand, please do so now. The first council member we'll hear from is Council Member Brewer, followed by Council Member Schulman, and then Council Member Hanif. Council Member Brewer.
Starting time.
All right. Thank you very much. I will be honest, I think the chair knows this, and certainly the commissioner, that I had the bill that provided the charter, and then it ended up with your agency, and I fought your agency. So it's not my favorite.
Yes.
I just want to let you know. But what I need to understand, having been borough president, how is it that you're not duplicating even what the borough presidents do with the community boards, what VAC does with figuring out how people hopefully get to vote and all those issues. And then I think you are working on language because nobody seems to be doing that. But I do think there's duplication here. So explain to me how you're not duplicating some of these other agencies. And certainly, for instance, I know that the fund for the city of New York, Alden Bonilla, does a whole lot of work with getting urban planners into the community board. So, I mean, I'm part of that program. So how is it that you're doing something different and adding value to New York?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much for, continuing to ask this really important question, because
You're being very nice, because I
no, I'm not being nice.
I'm just letting you know.
I'm actually being very honest about that. I think that's a really important question to keep engaging, because I think we all share the value of having efficient government. And we do not want duplication. We want to be mindful of how we're using tax dollars and doing our work. And so I think what we have done is pay close attention to the charter and what it asks us to do in terms of collaborating with a wide variety of, agencies and intergovernmental partners to make sure that we're not duplicating anything that anyone is doing and adding value. In the area of community boards, we partner very closely, as I already mentioned, with borough presidents and also Department of City Planning, OMB, MOIA, like all the agencies that cut across, the programs that we're supposed to serve on for community boards. We're working with them. Okay. And as far as access to urban planners, I mean, we know that the community boards have been asking for urban planners to be placed within CBs for a very long time. And
but they have them from Alden Bonilla, and they have them.
That is wonderful. What we did so far is to meet the charter requirement that we are supposed to provide access to neutral planners. We did the MWBE directory. That's the only thing we've done to date. Okay. Anything we do in the future will be coordinated with, non-duplicative. We have already connected with the fund for City of New York and continue to talk with DCP and borough presidents who also have planners to assist the board. So
Okay.
we're going to be making sure that we're not
All right.
duplicating.
I just, you have a big staff, so I'm trying to think of what else you could do. Now, PB, I just did PB. 14 of us did PB. With all due respect, I believe the only person we talked to was Benjamin Solitaire, who seems to be former intern of mine, seems to be volunteering for PB, and I never talked to anybody else, and we did it. So I don't know, what did you do in terms of PB to help us, if at all? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Oh, for the city council process,
'Cause we never heard
CEC.
from the city council. We just talked to Benjamin Solitaire. That's it. Nobody else.
You're talking about the process that ran on the platform
Yeah.
recently?
So you did
Yeah.
the platform. So you built the platform. Is that what you did?
Yeah, for the most recent process, the city council did leverage the Participate platform to run the council process.
Okay.
Yeah, we were not involved in the process because that is council's process.
Okay, you know what
So-
you could do? You know what you
Yeah.
could do to help with all this stuff? Because I do think you're duplicating. I'm gonna be honest with you. The borough presidents do not need you. I didn't need you as borough president. I did not. And I didn't want you involved with the community boards. I'll be honest, because I think it's a conflict. Because I think they should be independent, not subject to anything that the mayor does, and they should be independent. That's my opinion. However, civic engagement in the schools sucks. So, I mean, you can start from any place you want. I think Generation X does some. There is no civic education. So if you could figure out what it should be, I think that would be fabulous. That would be something that I believe, DOE is another morass. But that would be something that I think would be helpful. I have to be honest with you. Others may feel differently. I still think you need to figure out what exactly your agency is doing and keep
I'm
us up to
excited.
date on a regular basis.
Yeah, we'll be happy to work with the DOE Civics for All program to continue to look at civics education
All
in
right,
the
'cause
schools.
whatever that program is, it's not working, just so you know.
Thank
All right,
you.
thank you.
Now I'd like to welcome Councilmember Schulman to testify, followed by Councilmember Hanif. Councilmember Schulman.
Starting time.
You have to unmute me. Oh, okay, I'm not unmuted. Dang it. I'm sorry, Dr. Said. So I have a few questions. One is, how much money does Mayor Adams plan to set aside for citywide participatory budgeting in fiscal year 23?
For fiscal year 23, we are, I'm so sorry, excuse me. We will be running a process of $5 million in expense funding for citywide PB, the first round of PB, and that process will go through fiscal year 24.
And I am a little confused because I used to work in the speaker's office in the community engagement division, which did the PB process. Is this, how do you work with the council? Is the council separate? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
For the implementation of citywide PB, city council is a really important partner, right? I mean, we will be all around the city, so we look forward to working with the council members to implement this process. And as Chair Ung mentioned, you might have ideas for community-based organizations and other key stakeholders that we ought to be connecting with in your district. And so we'd love to keep talking with you about that. It will also be up to each individual council members to continue to use your discretionary funding if you choose to run your own process. And, assuming you want to continue to leverage the platform, we'll certainly be coordinating on that front and hopefully working to align the processes. We're on a slightly different calendar in the sense that we are having a year-long process of idea generation and voting, and a year-long process of implementing projects because they're all expense projects. And so we're just, again, hoping to continue to build the lines of communication between ourselves and council around this process.
Yeah, it's really important because some members spend their discretionary and some it comes out of the speaker's office in terms of the community engagement division. So that's something that all I think needs to be coordinated a little better. I also wanted to ask about early voting in terms of interpreters. How many early voting and election day poll sites does CEC plan to serve for June 2022. And I want to just do a caveat here that we now may have 2 primaries
That's right.
because of the court decision. So do you have the resources and the funding to be able to do that?
Yeah, this is just evolving news on that the possibility of 2 primaries. We don't know for sure whether, right? We don't know for sure whether there'll be 2 or 1. Hopefully, we'll find that out soon. As far as the number of sites we're serving, we have been serving 25 on election day and 75. 25 for early voting and 75 for election day. And we will be continuing that. And depending on what happens with the, with the calendaring of the primary, if there are 2 or if there are 1, we'll need to assess our budget and see how we, what we will need to do.
Okay, and I want to, at some other point, because I don't have a lot of time left, talk to you separately about how those sites are selected. For example, I have a Russian community in my district, so I wanted to make sure that they have, because in the past, stuff has gone on where people from the community come in and interpret for people who really shouldn't be doing that, who don't have the training and all of that. So we should talk about that. That's one. The other is a totally separate question. By the way, I want to thank Chair Ong for this important hearing. You had talked when Chair Ong had asked about the organizational structure. You mentioned artist in residence. Can you talk about that a little bit? What that involves?
Yeah, I mean, we started, as I mentioned, we were working with Department of Cultural Affairs on the Public Artist in Residence program, and we had an artist in residence with us through that program. And after the project was completed to transform this bus from the Department of Corrections into a mobile civic engagement unit, we felt it was really important to continue to integrate arts into our work and to connect arts and civic engagement in more powerful ways. So we're continuing to work with the artists in residence, and it's a part-time function that we're hoping to continue to build on, build on the arts and connection to civics through that work.
All right, and there are artists throughout all of the boroughs too that I think should be connected. So
that would be great.
I'm inspired.
All right, so I'd like to learn more about that in the future, and thank you very much for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Hanif.
Starting time.
Thank you, Assalamualaikum, Dr. Saeed. Thank
Excellent.
you, first and foremost, for continuing participatory budgeting at this time, and especially focusing this initiative toward the needs of young people. I think all channels and opportunities for participatory budgeting is necessary. So excited to continue the work in the council, for council members to lead participatory budgeting. I too was among the council members that led PB this cycle, the 11th cycle for us. We need to bring back PB into the schools, and then for the CEC to do their PB is essential too. If we're going to talk about budget justice, I think as many opportunities that New Yorkers have towards deciding how to spend dollars and then focusing that attention around how dollars get spent and how much programming costs toward the needs of young people, I think is phenomenal work. So I'm excited to support the CEC's initiatives towards that. I'd like to know the breakdown of the peoples involved in your PB process, from leadership structures to the voter turnout. I'd then additionally like to know about some of the challenges that have come up through doing PB. PB is extremely challenging, no doubt. And then what are some of the lessons that you're learning?
By leadership structure, do you mean internally or just how we've been running it? Sorry.
How you've been running it. I know there's like a staff dedicated to participatory budgeting, and then volunteers. If you're replicating the district committee model that some of the council offices have.
Yeah, so far we've been, to date with the 2 processes, we've been working with community-based organizations who are proposing, because it's expense funding, who are proposing the ideas and working, with their community after needs are determined. They've also been running the voting phases, and we'll be looking to continue that process in this first iteration of PB. Because we do have expense funding again, we're working out an implementation plan. Right now, we're talking with stakeholders about what that implementation could look like citywide, and whether the district committee model is something we want to keep going with, depending on geography, right? Like we also, that's another decision point, is what's the geographic focus of the process, and in order to reach New York City residents. So those are some of the ways we're thinking about that. And then could you repeat the other parts of that question? I'm sorry.
What's been the voter turnout, or is there a voting model?
Yeah, the voter turnout for the tree process was about 29,500 people that voted, and they voted online on the platform. They also voted online through like just a straight survey. They had paper ballots. We went to libraries, CBO partners shared with their clients. So, I mean, in the youth process, there were 2,000 youth who voted. So, we're hoping to just keep building on that participation with the
so this
citywide
current
process.
model isn't just specific to young people anymore.
The current model in the tree neighborhoods?
Right.
No, it was
Okay,
everybody.
got it.
It was everybody,
Got it.
yeah.
And then, the 13 or 14 council members that did PB this cycle, it was really tough because it wasn't centralized. And we're trying to get the speaker to support this. And I'm hearing rumblings that she does, and we're going to figure out how to do this well and successfully. And I agree with Councilmember Brewer's frustrations that we only had, Ben and Laura to sort of like walk us through how to do this. And I think the hardest part was the platform.
Right.
The hardest part was the platform. I think this cycle garnered probably the lowest voter turnout, not because people weren't excited about deciding how to spend the city's dollars and on projects that are dear to them, but because of how inaccessible the website was.
Yeah.
I'd love to figure out how to make this work, because if we keep DeCedum, we're gonna fail PB in the city.
Yeah, it's I'm so glad that you're raising this, because we have been, and I think we went with DeCedum as a platform because it allows for transparency, right?
Time expired.
We researched a variety of different platforms and found this one seemed to be the best one, and also allows us to stay connected with other municipalities who are doing this work. You are right in that CEC continues to be, as a new agency, we're building the plane as we fly it, and we're continuing to learn along the way. I mean, one of our values is dynamic learning. So you're right that, the platform and the user interface has been challenging. So we are doing user testing, and we'll need to continue to be open to hearing from residents about their experience of the platform and keep tweaking it. I mean, DeCedum is actually, it's an international community of people who are working with the programming of that site. So whatever changes we're making to the site, we are going through that process as well, to continue to improve the platform, not just for New York City, but for users worldwide.
Yeah, I'd like to stay engaged with that. And of course, as we move into centralizing the process in the council, really thinking about how to make sure that voting is easy. I think the hardest part, which is the outreach, will continue to be hard, but once people are brought in, the voting piece should be the easiest lift.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and the other point for us to work together on also is that, I think there's going to be different kinds of strategies we'll need to use given the digital divide, right? Like the online voting process also has like two different groups of people, I'd say. One is the Participate platform, and if at all possible, like if we need to, and we did in the tree neighborhood process, because people may not want to set up an account
Right.
for a variety of reasons. And so we allowed them to have a vote on just a form where they clicked a survey. The advantage of the platform is that it makes sure that you have one vote per person, which we want to preserve the integrity of the vote. However, for those who feel, concerned, they could do that online method. And then there are lots of people who we would get through, just local on the ground canvassing and outreach, and through partnerships, with community partners. So we're going to have to keep doing all of those things, I think, to just really raise the participation as much as possible. Of course, the online outreach was difficult during the pandemic, and hopefully that'll come back and continue to build the PB participation citywide.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting to the best version of this website. If we keep to the CDM or another platform, I do agree that all of the PB processes should be hosted on one platform. I think that's what makes participatory budgeting unique, and to see all of the simultaneous initiatives running together or at different timelines just shows that the city is deeply engaged to civic engagement and democracy. So I'm excited for us to continue that work together. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll now turn it back to Chair Ung for further questions.
Thank you, CJ. So I will move on to the language assistance and voter outreach program. How much does CEC coordinate with BOE and CFB on this? Because I think, as Councilmember Brewer said, there seems to be maybe a duplicative efforts going on about this. So this is like, do you guys talk, before, early voting starts? Do you, is there a coordination among all three agencies?
Yeah, there is. I mean, CEC is permitted to provide language assistance, but based on the charter, we cannot be duplicative of anything the BOE is doing. We provide assistance in languages that are not currently covered under the Voting Rights Act. And we do coordinate with the Board of Elections on operations. We work with the CFB to help translate and promote outreach materials beyond the current Voting Rights Act languages that they don't, translate into. And we also work closely with the Campaign Finance Board in convening and attending meetings of the New York City Elections Consortium. And as I mentioned, we are working with CFB and others to ensure that our voter turnout education work is complementary, and continue to partner on events to help make, make sure that we're reaching as many New Yorkers as possible.
So thank you. So when you say it's complementary, what does that practically mean? Like, is there a conference call BOE before elections? Is there how does that really practically work?
Yeah, so we do have we do coordinate with BOE, and we do have we do have meetings and calls with them where we're discussing. First, we get a list of where the poll sites are, and we take that list and analyze it to determine, where we'll be providing our services based on our methodology. We then give that list to BOE so that they know where we'll actually be in their universe of sites, and they in turn coordinate with their on the ground operations staff to let them know we'll be there providing services. And we work with each site to figure out where our interpreters will be stationed. And that is also communicated to BOE staff on the ground.
Has it happened in the past where there was a site or two that was between CEC and BOE that was missed?
By missed?
But like it needed like interpretive services, but either CEC or BOE wasn't there with the poll site interpreters.
I mean, on our part, we have been using our methodology to determine where our interpreters should be stationed, right? I mean, and in pretty much all the cases where we've decided based on our methodology, this is where interpreters need to go, we have had interpreters stationed there. And I use the word pretty much because I think in the first one time it was like super cold, and it was, because of the way the poll site was, it was a small site. And we couldn't find a place inside the site where we could be ADA compliant, but outside the poll room, which we have to do by law. So our interpreters had to be stationed outside, and it was extremely cold that day. And so because of that, we weren't able to provide services at that particular site for just that day. But we also revised our methodology to be able to take, as a result of that, to be able to take into account how the interpreters themselves are being treated throughout this process in terms of like cold weather. So we are looking into that, and the methodology will continue to consider these questions as we revise in September 22.
Great. And actually, since you brought that up, where actually are the CEC's interpreters typically stationed? Are they close to the BOE interpreters? Like, are they, like, how would if someone goes into a poll site, how would the voters find the CEC interpreters?
Yeah, we do have signage that indicates we're providing services in additional languages at each site. And then inside there's also signage about where the interpreters may be seated. In some of the sites, they may be outside, and those tents are marked and visible on our tables. We have Civic Engagement Commission label with the language that we're providing services in, and those are typically right outside of the polling room, so people can see it as they enter the polling room.
So
we have to be outside the guardrail per the state law.
Oh, you have to be outside the guardrail.
Yeah.
So that's separate from where the BOE interpreters are.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
Okay.
yes, we have to be compliant with the state law. Yeah, it makes it makes it tough in some cases, for voters. You're right to point that out. And we are trying to provide as much signage as possible to let people know, that we are there, and also doing outreach beforehand to know that we are there, so they know that we're there.
Okay, so how can a voter find out where that interpreter will be available at their poll site through CEC? Like, what are the outreach to them?
Yeah, we have been again promoting through. We have a voting center on our site, also on our Participate site. And then have been doing geo-targeted ad placements in the election districts where we're providing services in different languages. And then now with an expanded outreach team, we're going to be doing on-the-ground canvassing in specific neighborhoods as well to promote a greater awareness.
Thank you. And with the municipal voter laws going into effect, have CEC thought through that about how that would change the interpreters program going forward or modify?
I think we'll have an opportunity to consider some of those questions and it will be important to consider those questions as we're, modifying and revising the methodology. We're in the very early stages of planning for a public hearing on the revision of the methodology, and we're looking at utilization patterns across years and languages for the poll sites, and then thinking about how language communities are growing. And also we'll be looking at, the changes to the law on municipal voting as we're revising.
Have CEC and BOE been in contact about this issue at all, or you're waiting for that?
On this particular matter, we have not communicated with the BOE specifically. Right now, a lot of our communication is very focused on making sure operations are smooth for the elections. But we will, we'll continue to talk with BOE, CFB, and a variety of partners to make sure that the rollout of municipal voting is as smooth as possible. It's going to be very important to be coordinated with a lot of different stakeholders on this.
Thank you, Dr. Syed. And just one last question about early voting. Right now, I believe CEC's only providing interpreters on the final 2 days of early voting, which are there thoughts about like expanding that for the full early voting period?
That can be another consideration in our revision. We went with the two, and I think it's also important to remember that early voting is still growing as a phenomenon, right? And so we need to do a lot of education for New Yorkers to take advantage of early voting overall. In considering the early voting implementation in the first round of when we were doing the methodology, we were looking at how widely is early voting being used. And we noticed that the last weekend, it was the greatest use. So that's why we went with that. And I think in reviewing the methodology, we can look again at how it's faring, you know, and consider whether we want to adapt it to changes in the patterns of usage.
Thank you. I look forward to seeing the new methodology, and I'm done for now, but I just want City Council Member Ressler has also joined us. I don't know if he has any questions. Maybe not. Yes, he's here. Okay. You're muted.
Somebody has to unmute. Oh, there we go. Okay, great. Thank you for unmuting me. I appreciate it. So I'm sorry I'm on a bicycle, but it's always good to be with Dr. Saeed and Chair Ong. Thank you for your leadership. So there were two things I was hoping to ask about. Firstly was regarding participatory budgeting, which, you know, with the central staff at the council no longer providing the same support as was the case a few years ago, it's a heavy lift on small council member offices to do this work. And I think we're all very eager for the CEC to step up and help us play a leadership role in making participatory budgeting a reality citywide. Is there currently a plan for making that happen? And what should, if not, what can we expect in the upcoming fiscal year in terms of an expansion of PB in our communities?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. And I don't think I've ever talked to a council member while they're on a bike. So for citywide PB, we were given an allocation of $5 million in expense dollars for citywide PB for the first round through fiscal year 24. And we have been running pilot processes. So far, we had one that was youth focused, and another one that we recently just completed in the Tree neighborhoods. And organizations, CBOs proposed ideas and community members voted on those ideas, and those winning projects are now being implemented in the 33 neighborhoods of the Task Force for Racial Inclusion and Equity. And I believe in your council district, it's El Puente. That has been running the process and is implementing it. It's a project focused on mental health. And we'll be continuing to work with CBO partners in the rollout of the citywide expense process. And also looking forward to working with council members, you know, to make sure that we are creating the most inclusive process that we can and reaching as many residents as possible.
Oh, great. Thank you for unmuting me. That's very helpful, Dr. Saeed. Thank you. And thank you for the great work that you do and that Laura does and everybody on the related initiatives. I was surprised to hear you reference that you think state law prohibits the city-funded interpreters from accessing, from standing within the poll sites or within the 100 feet rule. I had thought that this was a Board of Elections interpretation that was problematic and that should be reconsidered. I was hoping you could clarify on that this is in fact, you think a clear state law violation for our interpreters to be standing within the poll sites.
Yeah, as you know, there was litigation around this issue, right? And we are going with, in order to work effectively on the ground with BOE operations, I mean, we are going with that interpretation of the law at the moment. So in an ideal world to serve voters, and the BOE agrees with this, you know, we'd want to be very closely coordinated. So I think there are opportunities to look at that, you know, should this program continue to work and serve voters.
Okay, that's helpful. And then I think that covers my questions for now. I really appreciate it, Chair Ung, and for your leadership on this committee, and for all the great legislation you've been sponsoring in the council. I'm really, I was really enjoying the bills that you put forward yesterday. So thank you for all the work you're doing. And Dr. Saeed, thank you. I'm so happy that you're continuing to lead in this role. Good to have you there. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Have there been other council members on bikes in council hearings? Just wondering. You could be setting a trend here.
Wait, oh, your hand is up again.
I was just gonna say I'm off my bicycle. I'm now walking, but it was.
Okay.
I'm usually not on camera when I'm biking, so that was a special. I just didn't want to be rude to you, Dr. Saeed, so I was trying to go extra slow and be careful. So, but but it's nice to see you. Sorry.
You too.
Thank you, City Councilman Ressler. And I'm done with my my questions, Dr. Saeed. I don't know if anybody has any more questions. I believe City Council Member Hanif had her hand up before. It's okay. The hand up is back up. Okay.
Thanks. I mean, I guess I want to know if the citywide participatory budgeting is working. Just to expand on Lincoln's question, I mean, I think the idea was to have like several planks of PB initiatives. The idea was never for the CEC to lead and support council members leading participatory budgeting. It was just adding on another anchor so that New Yorkers have one more opportunity to decide how to spend the city's dollars. Do you think in its iteration this is working? And I had asked about some of the challenges or the lessons. Would love to hear what those have been.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I didn't really talk about that. Thank you for bringing that up again. I think one of the challenges is we already discussed, right? How do we create opportunities for participation that are digital online, the digital ones, making sure that they're working. So that's been an area of a lot of continuing to work with communities on that. One of the areas like we innovated in is just working with community-based organizations. As you know, in your former role with Councilmember Lander, you ran an expense process, you know, at the neighborhood level, and we had the chance to do that across 33 neighborhoods. So how that has been also a place of learning, because we find that community-based organizations you know, have varying capacity, right, to do all kinds of things. So how to support community-based organization and really build their capacity. That's something we'll be building into the citywide program, that capacity building piece. So we help organizations really develop their civic engagement work more deeply. And I think the other great lesson for us has really been the value of an expense process. You know, we've talked about this before. I think the council process has largely been a capital process, and what that has meant is that the time it takes to complete projects is often longer, which means that residents don't see the direct, result of their participation. Whereas with an expense process, since the timeline is shortened, they can more directly see that, hey, I'm participating and there's a project I voted on and it's implemented and I have an impact and my voice makes a difference. So I think that's just amplifying that kind of citywide is going to be really key. And the last thing I wanted to say about lessons learned is I think we really need to sort of change the story and the narrative about what PB is, who participates, by elevating the voices of
Time
people
expired.
who have been participating, getting them to share their stories of participation. And we started to do that actually in the Tree neighborhood space. We started to interview some of the CBOs who are working with us and get their stories about why this project or process mattered for them, how it made a difference for their communities. And we'll be sharing those stories out more in the coming months to help excite people about what they're stepping into and hopefully galvanize more participation.
That's really wonderful. And has the CEC put out any reports about participatory budgeting, or is there forthcoming reporting on just how PB's been running?
Yeah, we will be writing up a report to talk about what we learned during the pilot phases and see how we can, integrate the lesson. We're going to make sure that we integrate the lessons into citywide for sure. And I think, like I said, dynamic learning is going to be really key for us because it'll be the first time that there'll be a citywide process. It'll also be the first time there will be a citywide expense process. There's going to be a lot of learning that we will all do. So we're really excited about that.
Great.
Chair, I don't see any other council members' hands raised. So if you don't have any other questions, we can move on to public testimony.
I do not, thank you.
Great, thank you. We'll now turn to public testimony. Please be advised that for this portion of the hearing, we will be calling on individuals one by one to testify. Each panelist will be given 2 minutes to speak. Please begin once the sergeant has started the timer. Council members who have questions for a particular panelist should use the Zoom raise hand function, and I will call on you after the panelist has completed their testimony. For panelists, once your name is called, a member of our staff will unmute you and the sergeant at arms will set the timer and give you the go-ahead to begin. Please wait for the sergeant to announce that you may begin before delivering your testimony. I'd now like to welcome Ben Weinberg to testify, followed by Ahmed Butt, Mohammed Q. Amin, and then Glenn Bolofsky. Ben Weinberg, you may begin when the sergeant calls time.
Starting time.
Hello, good afternoon, members of the Committee on Governmental Operations. My name is Ben Weinberg, and I'm the Policy Director at Citizens Union. Citizens Union is a nonpartisan good government group dedicated to making democracy work for all New Yorkers for 125 years. Thank you for the committee for the opportunity to provide comments today, and we commend Chair Ong and the committee for conducting an oversight hearing on a new city agency that has yet to be reviewed by the council. I just want to focus my quick testimony on community board assistance. It was a fascinating conversation so far, and I've learned a lot as well. Community board support was one of the 3 main charter mandated tasks that the commission was given by the voters. And when the 2018 Charter Revision Commission considered what assistance the future commission would provide for community board, it focused on land use resources. It did also task the commission with language and technological assistance, but really the heart of that reform was in land use resources, and specifically creating an available pool of urban planners independent of board president offices. And that was because of the important role community boards play in developing 197A plans and in ULR processes. And indeed, community boards' comments on developments are kind of the first line of community input and sometimes the first line of defense. And their opinion is, although advisory, significant enough that lobbyists spend significant sums of money lobbying those community boards. Unfortunately, that charter mandate is dependent on appropriations as detailed in Charter Section 3203. So I'll make it short because I see time is running out. Citizens Union urges the council to provide the resources needed to develop a meaningful land use assistance program for community boards. We believe these resources will go a long way in empowering communities who face powerful and well-funded developers and city agencies. And we ask the council to turn this charter provision into fully funded mandates. My written testimony includes references to other aspects of the commission work, and I didn't have time to acknowledge, of course, their hard work in setting up a new agency under COVID and in their great work on language access at all sites. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to welcome Ahmed Butt to testify, followed by Mohammed Q. Amin, and then Glenn Belofsky. Ahmed Butt, you may begin upon the sergeant's announcement.
Starting time.
I want to thank Committee Chair Ung and council members here today for the opportunity to testify. I'm Ahmed Butt, Civic Engagement Coordinator at the Asian American Federation. We proudly represent the collective voice of more than 70 member nonprofits serving 1.5 million Asian New Yorkers. Our Asian American community is getting more and more dispersed across our city, moving beyond ethnic enclaves. We work and live across our city, and that presents a challenge when it comes to civic engagement. Because our LEP population is spread out and not always within clusters, our most politically isolated community members are often looked over by critical programs like the Pole Site Assistance Program. Furthermore, a lack of education in our communities about this program undermines its impact. Nonetheless, the Asian American Federation and the Civic Engagement Coalition we lead, the AAPI Power Coalition, have and continue to do large-scale, on-the-ground work in our most marginalized communities. The CBOs in our coalition, who collectively made almost 2 million contacts with Asian voters last year, we serve 8 different ethnic communities in 4 boroughs, credibility in our most isolated communities, and must occupy leadership roles in city civic engagement initiatives. Our coalition members must be part of the process, engaged as members, and centered as experts. Given the proposed changes to this year's primary election timeline, it is of utmost primacy that voter engagement efforts center the ability of our CBOs to guide and educate underserved communities. While the state redistricting process has largely been viewed as a political fight, proposed changes will without a doubt increase confusion and indifference among voters. We're running the risk of further disenfranchising our most isolated communities, while we should be focused on increasing their participation. I urge you to consider the impact these changes will have on turnout and partner with our CBOs so as to not leave our communities behind in your education efforts. The following recommendations will help city agencies ensure that our community members are not only excluded from their voter registration efforts due to a lack of adequate resources or training, but also provide a culturally competent and language accessible civic engagement resources. Build rapport and prioritize community-based organizations. Make information on poll site interpretation services more easily accessible, and eliminate language barriers present before voters reach the polls. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to welcome Mohammed Q. Amin to testify, followed by Glenn Belofsky. Mohammed Q. Amin.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would first like to thank the Chair Ung and the council member here today for the opportunity to testify. My name is Mohammed Q. Amin, and I am the founder and executive director of the Caribbean Equality Project, founded in 2015 in response to anti-LGBTQ hate crime violence in Richmond Hill, Queens. The Caribbean Equality Project is an NYC-based community organization that empowers, advocates for, and represents Black and Brown, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and gender nonconforming immigrants in New York City. Since 2015, Caribbean Equality Project has built political power through civic engagement, voter registration, public education, and legislative advocacy. The organization cultivates civic participation and promotes education to build collective power for Afro and Indo-Caribbean LGBTQ people in New York City and Caribbean immigrants. Currently, the Caribbean Equality Project civic engagement work is hyper-local in Caribbean-centric neighborhoods in New York City, such as Little Caribbean in Flatbush, Brooklyn, Castle Hill and Soundview in the Bronx, and Richmond Hill, Queens. The organization leads and collaborates with community members and faith-based institutions and civic groups, such as the Asian American Federation, to mobilize undocumented and documented LGBTQ community members and their families to engage with elected officials through town halls, community board meetings, and city and state hearings, regardless of their immigration status. In 2021, to encourage civic participation in the primary and general elections and to promote voter education, we launched Mash Up the Vote, a culturally responsive Black and Brown Caribbean immigrant-focused civic engagement campaign. To continue building political power at the neighborhood level, we founded the Little Guyana Votes Festival, a culturally responsive hyperlocal civic engagement drive and resource fair in Richmond Hill, Queens. New York City is home to the largest Caribbean immigrant population.
Time expired.
In 2021, our voting rights advocacy included passing Intro 1867. This legislation expands democracy in New York City and to give over 900,000 green card holders the right to vote. We are recommending an investment in community-based organizations that's doing culturally competent voter registration and education work in geographically immigrant communities, and to expand hyper-local education around ranked choice voting. This also includes the Board of Election to make sure that immigrant communities know their rights under the new law that gives immigrants and permanent residents the right to vote. And I will also submit my written testimony that has more recommendations for the council. Thank you for the time.
Thank you. I'd now like to welcome Glenn Belofsky to testify. And at this time, if your name has not been called and you wish to testify, please raise your hand using the Zoom raise hand function. Glenn Belofsky.
Starting time.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Ung. Very nice to see you, and all the council members, Rustler, and everyone else. I also want to thank central staff for organizing this. I know it's very time consuming. You guys make it look easy. I'd like to speak about government operations in terms of the New York City Department of Finance programs. If you're an individual who can't get around very well, if you're a disabled individual or a senior citizen, or just an average member of the public and have a parking ticket, you can fight a ticket for sanitation with oath, and you can do so remotely by phone. You can't do that with the Parking Violations Bureau. So people are required, if they want to give oral arguments, to actually physically come in to do so. This is a due process issue for individuals because they can't always get in there, so they have to literally mail it in or upload it, denying them the ability to make oral arguments. We're here today talking about voting rights. It's great that we're improving in that area, but those who are already here and getting parking tickets are denied their fundamental due process rights unless they can physically travel to the PVB. It would save the government a lot of money if their judges didn't have to sit in their offices to conduct these hearings. It would save the PVB DOF millions of dollars a year in office space, computer space, locally, and printers and storage of materials as well, because when they find a ticket not guilty on paper that you bring in for a live hearing, they store those for several years to examine them for fraud. So they're storing the documents and then they're paying extra for the storage and for discarding the documents later. That's my testimony today, and I thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to do this.
Thank you. And seeing no further hands raised, Chair Ung, I'll turn it back to you for closing remarks.
Thank you. I really, Dr. Saeed especially, thank you so much for spending time with us today. I think we all have learned a lot from this hearing. I look forward actually maybe in perhaps soon in a year, I don't know, but too soon to talk about what's next with CEC. I think it's actually very exciting having the conversation today from participatory budgeting to language assistance at post sites, the upcoming year with all the new city council members and with all city vote. I definitely see ways where CEC will be working more with the new city council members and with the different CBOs out there. So again, thank you so much. Oh,